This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get it. I don't get it.
And we are still not tired yet. On episode number 23 of Two Bad Hombres, I am your host, Vito Jerome Churko, alongside the usual sidekick and partner in crime of mine, that is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, welcome to the weekend. Greatly looking forward to our conversation. Lots of positive reviews of you filling in for Adam on Doc and Jock. Always look forward to the times where we can record podcasts. A lot of things went down this week in regards to society. A lot of bad news, Vito, went down this week with my college team, Michigan State, the country. You got Kathy Griffin doing some outrageous things with the president. You got HBO real-time host Bill Maher dropping the N-word on live television. A very weird week in terms of the news. A lot of it was kind of skewed negative. But on this podcast, we try to bring you the news and notes and our opinions and things like that. But it's very interesting, though, in terms of the fun that we can have when we do like Facebook Live previews, when we have these conversations. And something that you revealed in our pre-show meeting was unbelievable, and I would say unacceptable, in that you told me you go to a person's home to get your hair styled. And not, okay, fine, I could say, okay, great, she's a young lady, you go to her home, maybe she makes you some coffee, maybe you have some conversations about The View, or you liberal stuff.
Tell me about The View, the show The View?
Yeah, you're a liberal snowflake, so you probably go talk about, like, you know, the Trump and...
By the way, I like The View, but I ain't no snowflake.
I know, but I'm just kidding with you. But then
Yes.
you told me, no, she's not even in her 20s. I said, okay, fine, maybe you're into the MILFs, you like them 30,
Yeah,
40.
right.
You said, no, John, she's in her 60s. And I said, what? Do tell, why is your hairstylist somebody of that age?
Because she's been my childhood. Yeah, I'm not going to say that to her. I don't think I'm interested in her. I don't think she's interested in me. Now, the only good thing working for me is that she's single. But she just turned 60, and guess who else is turning 60 this year? My father, which makes me think, probably a little bit too old for me. Okay? So I'm not into that. And very nice lady.
Sexy.
Should I say that to her the next time I get my haircut? Maybe I should. Maybe it'll lead to something.
Vito.
But she's been my childhood hairstylist. I could never even imagine myself making a move on her, and I just wouldn't do it. It's not me. It would take somebody very, very young, more close to my age, and not very, very young, I guess, but more in their 30s. Probably 30s would be their oldest for me to be interested, seriously interested. And this lady is not close to that. And guess what? I view her as just, she's my hairstylist. Why can't she just be my hairstylist that I go to the house of to get my hair cut through? Why can't it just be that kind of an equation or transaction, Doc? Come on, man.
Let's have sex.
Well, because at this point in time, you know, each interaction that you have with a woman or a female, I'm just trying to get you to have a girlfriend or to have at least some loving relationships. And hell, you know, older people need love too.
They do, but I'm not the one going to be giving the love to her.
Okay.
She can get provided the love through another means, okay?
But don't you think, though, that a person of your age and a professional like you are, a journalist, should maybe go to a Lady Jane's or maybe an upscale place, maybe in Birmingham, Royal Oak, find a nice, young, female stylist to do your hair? And plus, you could say it to the stylist, say, look, give me a style that will attract the ladies to the Big Vito.
To the Big V, baby. Big everywhere, trust me. Now, I think you got that, right, Doc? I think everybody else probably got that anyways. Now, the thing is, are you willing to pay for my next haircut appointment then? Because if you want me to go to Royal Oak or Birmingham, okay,
How much
you
you
got to
paying
pay
now?
for my next appointment.
How much you paying now?
20 big ones right now, which is, I don't think, a big
So plus tip is
cost.
25?
I gave her a little tip.
Just the tip?
A little tip. Just a tip. Yeah, anyways. But would you pay for my next haircut appointment in Royal Oak at a place like, I think there's a Bianchi's there too. Bianchi's is like a, you know, higher end hair salon. Would you pay for my next appointment to go meet a nice young lady over there?
If you go and you find a price and it's within reason, like maybe $20 to $40, I'll pay for your next hairstyle. If you take photos, if you take Nick with you and document it and run some game and make it a production. And hell, you don't have to be real about it. You can just be overt and say, look, beforehand, you can say, look, I'm here with ulterior motives. I want to get a haircut, but I'm also here because I'm checking you out. And if you do...
Wait, that was your game? Because remember last week? I think it was last week. You told me, oh, you were a player.
Yes.
74 women. I think you said 74 was the number that you gave out to everybody. So you were able to be a player through those means?
I think I was being humble.
Through using that line?
Because I went back and checked the little black book of the DLC.
And
I
what
think
did it say?
I was a little humble. I think it might have been 174. So,
Good God. Wow. Look at you, the player back in the day.
I forgot
Not that I believe it.
I forgot my freshman year at Michigan State.
That was a good year, huh? Really good year that you don't want to tell Andrea about.
But I'm serious. If you go to a nice place and you find somebody that you would sit with, I'll take care of it for you, Vito. No problem. You know the Detroit Sports Podcast Network will take care of you. No
The
doubt about
DSP
it.
network does take care of me very well, besides for with the pay at times. But that can be a means of paying me, right, in a way or so. So we'll say that much and leave it at that.
But Vito, a lot of celebrities had bad weeks this week. Very interesting stuff regarding, in a day and age where you have live television, you have this, PC police. There are some things, though, there's a line. And comedians, and we're talking about HBO's Bill Maher and what he said, there's a line. Comedians sometimes cross the line. They approach the line in the things they can talk about. But in this day and age, in 2017, it should just be universal, don't you think? That there's one word that you and I, Adam, Brandon Justice, we won't use on air, and that's the N-word. And so you would think that at this point in time in the culture that we live in. Now, do I believe that the word can be diffused by just talking about it openly and not reacting like, oh my God, he said something bad? That's my personal opinion about how to treat the N-word. It's just to here's how you diffuse it. You hear it, ignore it. It's done. But I know, for me, I can't speak on it because I'm not black.
You're not. I have found that out.
I'm not black. But in my opinion, how you diffuse something like that, look, I've heard the word camel jockey for, damn near my whole life. But when I hear it, I laugh and I move on. It affects me in zero ways. But, Bill Maher said something. I want to play it. And I want to get your reaction to it. My opinion is you just look. You don't need to have this big hullabaloo. You got people canceling on him. You got things like that. But the reason why he's going to stay on the air, he doesn't have sponsors. HBO relies solely on subscriptions. So there's no boycott. There's nothing that you can really do other than complain. But in this situation, you should let society deal with it and say, look, you don't say it, move on. He apologized, and that's that. That's how you keep it moving. But if you want to keep harping on the N-word over and over, it'll just continue to have this overwhelming force on society where, hey, if a guy like Bill Maher says it, then he risks, public scrutiny. He risks, having his career in jeopardy. Let's have a listen to his comments that he made on last week's show, Real Time with Bill Maher.
Dress up for Halloween. They don't do that in Nebraska?
It's frowned upon. Yeah, we don't do that quite as much. But
wow, I've got to get to Nebraska more.
You're welcome. We'd love to have you work in the fields with us.
Work in the field?
That's part of that. That's
Senator. I'm a house nigga. No, it's a joke. Thank you. You're still working in the fields out there.
Yeah, we want our kids to suffer.
So he right away knows, oops, I probably shouldn't have said that. In the video, which you don't see, he's swatting his hand going, oh, man, I probably shouldn't have said that. But the audience handled it. The individual that he said it to kind of looks at it, Senator Ben Sasse kind of like, oh, I kind of think this is wrong. And he kind of has come out and said, I should have probably said something right then and there. But it was handled, and he moved on. And, he apologized. Bill Maher's come out and said, look, I shouldn't have said it. And, Friday's one of those days where I'm up thinking about the show. And the guy's trying to be funny. Okay, now, if Bill Maher was a racist, if I thought that Bill Maher was a guy that was malicious and he said it, then you would look at him cross-eyed. But he's not racist. He's a liberal. He's a guy that champions positions for a lot of people. And so the way I look at it is if you were to say that, I would be like, look, Vito, we can't really say that here on the air, or you wouldn't say that. But I wouldn't admonish you for it because I know you're not a racist. I know that you're a kind-hearted individual. So you also have to address and look at, from my perspective, the person. If you know the person's not a racist, then a mistake like that, yes, it's a mistake, but he handled it right then and there. He's like, oh, I shouldn't have said it. Okay, because let's not all think that everybody's perfect. Black people have said racist things. White people say racist things. People out there make mistakes, and they use words they shouldn't. Maybe they're prejudiced. Maybe they make fun of gay people. Maybe they make fun of poor people. Maybe they make fun of tall people, short people. There are situations where people are going to make comments that we're not fond of. And so how I would treat it is you address it. You say, look, hey, not a good thing to say, and you move on and you hit your goals. But for this outrage to continue day after day after day, it's damn near been a week now, and people are still admonishing the man for saying it. You make a mistake, you say, hey, don't say it. You take 5 seconds out of your day, you keep it moving, you hit on your goals.
I think that it's really not close to what Kathy Griffin did either, where she decapitated the head of Donald Trump in a photo or whatever. Having a decapitated Donald Trump head like that wasn't a good look for her or for the CNN brand. And she was the co-host until just recently because of that incident. She was the co-host of the New Year's Eve special that CNN puts on every single year with Anderson Cooper. Cooper flat out said to everybody on Twitter that he wasn't a fan of it, did not advocate it whatsoever, and he was appalled by it.
That's not funny!
And she's apologized, Kathy Griffin, since, but guess what? Griffin deserved to be fired for her
That's not
mistake.
funny!
It wasn't funny. It wasn't. You tell him, Stewie. You tell him, baby, from Family Guy. Now, the thing is, Bill Maher, what he had said, it was offensive, an offensive term used. But the thing is, he's not a racist. And you know what? It's a little bit weaker, or it's a
Minor violation in your opinion?
It's a less offensive act than Kathy Griffin doing what she did. It really is. What do you think? I mean, when you compare both, when you look at what Kathy Griffin did, and you call me a liberal snowflake all the time, so I should have said, hey, you're decapitating the head of Donald Trump, this guy that I don't like as a president of the United States of America? Well, I'm all for it, right? No, because I realize that's not humane. That's highly, highly inappropriate, because you can never act like you're killing somebody and then post a picture of the person's head that you just, pretended to decapitate. That's not acceptable. There's no room for it, where the N-word is very offensive, and it should be held in that regard as an offensive term used by a white man, especially a white man, or anybody, really. If you take it as offensive, you can. You have the right to take it as offensive.
Exactly.
But,
no doubt about it. I agree with you fully.
Right?
What Kathy Griffin did was really out of bounds, because it hits a lot of nerves in terms of people who have been actually decapitated by terrorists and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a sad visual. It's a tough thing to see, because the thing that makes it worse is not the whole visual, but the intent. The reason you do that is to get attention, to shock people. And if that's the way you want to shock people, that means that your publicist team, the people that are part of your organization, yourself, if you would ever come close to showing me something like that and you ask me, hey, can I post this? I'd be like, Vito, what the hell are you doing? No. I would say, okay, I would ask you, like, why are you thinking about this? And we'd have a conversation, but I wouldn't fire you. I would say, look, no, you don't post that, only because I already know within 48 seconds of posting it, we're going to have an outrageous reaction. We're going to have people that are going to be offended, and you're going to hurt some people's feelings, especially those that have been through that, where they've lost a family member, or, a journalist who's been decapitated, or somebody close that's seen that visual, or anybody that's watched it. I mean, I've watched those videos and I'm left scarred. So to put that on your, social media shows a complete lack of self-control.
yeah.
And you can't have that as somebody who's in the media. We have a little bit of self-control, not a lot, but there are some things, we don't say and talk about, and you have to have it. So in that regard, yes, it's worse. So for this, what happens is, yes, you just send them out a message, hey, Bill Maher, wrong, you have him do a public apology, and that's where it needs to end. But to have, Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, what they were requiring? They want him to go to sensitivity training. They want a comedian to go to sensitivity training and to figure out how to deal with, the language that he uses. Look, the way you want to do it is this: avoid the N-word. It's not a word. It's not an endearing term. It's not a term that really adds any value to anything. So just avoid it. And if it comes out, you go, oops, I said it. You move forward. And the most important thing is how you treat people. And Bill Maher, he's got credibility. He's got a long track record of being a person that cares about other people. And yeah, he's got his habits we're trying to get you to have, but hey, he's a man.
Well, I'll say, luckily, this in regard to Bill Maher, it is the fact that he's not a racist, once again, hasn't used the N-word on his show previously. Like, if he just kept dropping the N-bomb, like in that episode 2, or does it again, well, maybe then you start thinking, is this grounds for dismissal of Bill Maher from his show? Then you maybe start thinking, well, something else has to be done. Or, you know what, they wouldn't dismiss him, but you would have to suspend him. HBO would be forced. Its hands would be tied to, I believe at least, Doc, to suspend him at that point if he were to drop the N-bomb again. Or if he would have, during that episode where he did drop it the one time, if he would have said it more than once and just gotten out of control with it, I think HBO would have had its hand forced, despite the fact that he's not a racist clear cut, that they would have had to suspend him for it. And if he does it again, you do suspend him then, Doc, in my opinion.
At best, it's a joke in poor taste.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's a bad joke. He tried to tell it. Comedy, I don't hold a guy like Bill Maher in great, outstanding, like a supreme leader. If the senator had said
He's
it,
not the president saying it, right? He's not Donald Trump, which maybe he has said it on Celebrity Apprentice or the set of Apprentice before. But anyways,
if the senator had replied and said something like that, I'd be
if he said the N-word, you're in a political position of high power. You can't be saying that whatsoever. And it's not right for anybody, once again, to say it, but a comedian will go there, will cross the line. He did, and once again, it was in bad taste, and he probably wouldn't ever do it again. He's smart enough to realize, well, my audience didn't like it, and maybe HBO wouldn't have anything to do with me anymore, or at least would suspend me, and you lose some money from that. So a guy, even with all that money that he does have, would he really risk losing a bunch of money to say the N-word again? Does he really?
Ooh, even I found that to be in bad taste.
Is he N-word trigger friendly? I don't think he is, because that's not the type of guy that he is. And my last point to end this conversation for good, Doc, in this week's episode is that Kathy Griffin, once again, Donald Trump, I don't like him myself, and I would have never posed with that kind of a photo. And I would never
I shall see you fired, damn you!
Yes, and she got it. She got what she had coming for her. But I was going to say, I would never wish that upon him either. Right? We can't wish that upon him. And, even for you, if you don't like Barack Obama or whatever president it may be that we haven't liked in the past too, we're not going to wish upon him something like that he gets killed, gets decapitated. That's in really poor taste. And to wish ill will upon somebody like that says a lot about that person. I don't care if she's a comedian, as Kathy Griffin is, or not. It's still something that she had to pay for, and she was rightfully fired by CNN, in my opinion.
All right, Vito, let's take our first time out, come back. We got to hit on a topic that's kind of, been avoided by the network a little bit until all the facts came out. We definitely got to talk about Michigan State and what's been going on with them. The news broke earlier in the week on Wednesday regarding who was charged, and so now, finally, once all the facts were given, we have an opportunity to kind of dissect it a little bit and see how it was covered, our thoughts regarding the entire incident, and you and I can get our perspective regarding, obviously, a tumultuous 2017 for Michigan State. And that's something that I found to be quite hilarious when it came across the Twitter wire. And when I saw it, I was like, is this for real? And I want to get your sense of, a law in California that I guess a lot of people are taking advantage of, even at the NBA Finals. Stay with us. Two Bad Hombres will continue right after this quick timeout. Doc here, and I want to tell you about our host site, Podomatic.com. Earlier in the week, if you listened and downloaded, you heard Doc and Jock's 200th episode. A great accomplishment for Adam and I. It's one that we're very proud of. 200 straight weeks of podcasting, never missing a Thursday. So we were able to, record podcasts all the way back to September of 2013, and we got to celebrate episode 200. How were we able to do that? Hell, we have a great host site, Podomatic. When Adam and I were looking to, upload our recorded audio, we needed a place to put it. And the first thing I did was Google uploading podcasts easily. And luckily for us, the first thing that popped up was Podomatic.com. User-friendly, very easy to upload podcasts. I've had Jerry, Vito, Adam, Jason, Brandon, everybody associated with the network has uploaded podcasts to Podomatic. And when we go to share it, everybody that likes us and has grown with us since September of 2013 has followed us through Podomatic.com. When we share the link, when people listen, one of the sites that we promote is Podomatic. And it's a great host site. The reason why it's great is, they got great customer service, very reliable. They're not one of these run-of-the-mill host sites that's just going to be here today and then be gone tomorrow. They've been around since 2005. And when I saw the video on how to post podcasts, literally, we record a podcast, and within 5 minutes after editing, because you and I, Vito, we're fresh, right from recording, right to upload. We upload it to Podomatic.com, and within 5 minutes, boom, you have your audio up to the internet, to iTunes, and you can start sharing it to the entire world. So if you're starting a brand new podcast and you want to grow and develop a strong audience, you got to have a great host site, and we recommend Podomatic.com.
Sit down, be humble, sit down, be humble.
And back here in episode number 23 of Two Bad Hombres, I am your host, Vito Jerome Churko, alongside the Doc from Doc and Jock. That is John Charles Macaroon. John, we have some a little funny news to talk about to start off before we get into some Michigan State serious stuff. And that funny news regards a recent report that the Cavaliers were getting high in, tell me more about it. In the locker room after game 2? Is that what I'm hearing?
After game 2 of the finals, where the Cavaliers were destroyed, a lot of media members started tweeting out, and it first came out from The Ringer, and then other people, they were commenting like, there's a strong smell of marijuana in this locker room. And everybody kind of was like, what's going on? So on Tuesday, Brian Windhorst, an NBA reporter for ESPN, went on First Take, and, Molly Karim went up and asked him, and it's like, look, this is kind of going around. You were there. What happened? So this is what he said, and we'll talk about it.
So you were in the locker room post-game, right?
Yes.
Excuse me, sir. Did you smell marijuana?
Is that a serious question in California? Because I had somebody walk up to the street and say hello to me the other day in San Francisco, and he had a roach. I'm not used to that, you know?
It's legal, brother.
There was a smell of marijuana in the Cavs locker room, but there are 2 doors to that locker room, and there were 3 times as much media there.
So it could be the media
dudes hanging around the finals, is all I'm going to say.
All right.
I did smell marijuana, but I have no idea where it came from.
Are you hearing anything about this cannabis situation?
Because it was in California. By the way, it's legal in California, but it ain't legal in the NBA. So I guess, that. But no one's talking about it. I don't think it was a big deal. It was just made us laugh, honestly.
So when I saw that across the wire, I'm like, get the hell out of here. Why wasn't that looked at a little bit? It's illegal. So the best part was, Mr. Windhorst coming out and saying, well, there was media there. Do you think there's a chance that some media were getting high in the Cavs locker room? We're like, look, man, we're not getting paid. LeBron doesn't want to come to the podium.
He's not talking to us at the podium. This sucks.
Let's just get high.
I want to lose my job anyway. It doesn't pay well. I mean, it's journalism. I'm running for a newspaper that's going to be defunct in a few months probably. So let's just get high and enjoy ourselves all we can. All we see the Cavs get blown out through the first 2 games.
What do you think about that story? It's unbelievable. When I saw it, I was literally shocked. I'm like, what's going on here? How is it possible that there's an odor of marijuana in the Cavs locker room?
It's unbelievable, as you noted, Doc, that nobody brought it up and made it a bigger story up to this point. It took Brian Windhorst to talk about it on First Take. I mean, for it to gain widespread attention, Molly Karim of First Take asked him the question. I think it was a question that, is interesting. It's one that people want asked, and she asked it. She's a very good host, by the way, and moderator of First Take. I give her a lot of credit for dealing with Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman every single day, especially Screamin' A. Stephen A. Smith, that is. So she asked the right question. Windhorst, in a funny manner, brought up that it could have been any of those reporters, like you said. And you know what? Are the Cavs giving up on the series then? And should we actually make a bigger issue about it? I think to a certain extent. Now, everybody has the right to do what they want. Now, it's not legal, perhaps, in the NBA. The NBA frowns upon it, and those guys could get suspended. And I believe heavily suspended, lose some money, that would be involved. So those guys obviously didn't care. And we're not going to frame it on LeBron, the leader of the team, and say that, well, because he's doing it, or he told the guys they could do it, well, then it's not a big deal. And that's why the NBA wouldn't get itself involved. But trust me, if this really gained widespread attention in the case where players' names started being noted, don't you think the NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, would have to act then, in all seriousness?
No doubt about it. If that is something that's illegal in the NBA, the smell will be like, where's it coming from? Especially, it's not a good look, because not only are there media there, sometimes Sports Illustrated or some programs, maybe some surrounding programs will send youthful journalists in there to kind of maybe have some fun or ask some light questions or do some teaching. You can't have that smell emanate from the locker room. That's a horrible look. But hell, Vito, if you're a member of the Cavaliers and you're getting destroyed, would you think maybe about toking up?
No, because I think it looks worse for them because they're getting blown out in the fashion that they did through the first 2 games when it looked like at times they didn't even have a shot in either game in Golden State to start off the NBA Finals. For me, it's in bad taste of the Cavaliers, a horrible look. Don't you think the perception that it expresses to the widespread media and just people that have watched the finals, have watched the Cavaliers from afar as well, that it tells you that these Cavaliers don't care about the fact that they're getting blown out against the team that I believe, at this point, they look like the superior team, the team that's going to win it all. But still, you can't be just mailing it in after 2 games. You're going home to Cleveland, having a chance to come back after you came back last year, down 3-1 in the finals against the very same foe. I think it's a bad look for the Cavaliers.
Completely awful look. Unbelievable that this would be released, and especially if it's a player or even a member of the entourage. Most likely, though, don't you think it's probably not a member of the team, but likely A hanger-on?
Well, we're going to say that to be nice for the Cavaliers to look out for their behinds. I don't know why we're looking out for their behinds because what kind of tie do we have to them? But I would hope, and I think it's not LeBron, but I don't know those other guys. I think LeBron's he's a role model for the league. Imagine if it's him. If it comes out one day, LeBron James was token up in the locker room after game 2 of the finals when his team's down 2-0.
It's not him.
It wasn't him. But it could have very well been somebody else on the team. And I think it could have been, and probably was, even though it could have been a member of one of those players' entourages, and maybe LeBron's big entourage. Don't call it a posse, by the way. Phil Jackson made that mistake, right? But the thing is, if I'm LeBron James with all that power, and that entourage is bowing down to him at every single possibility, right? They're going to listen to every single one of LeBron's words and take it to heart. So when that's the case, wouldn't you think LeBron would have the audacity to say something to his entourage? Or even the other player in that locker room would say it to his entourage, and that entourage would adhere to the advice and get the heck out of the locker room if they really wanted to light one up and do some cannabis? I mean, don't you think they would listen to LeBron? Or even another player, not of LeBron's magnitude in that Cavaliers locker room after game 2?
It's something that can't happen, and it's bad PR. It'll be looked at, and it'll be addressed, and it probably will never, ever happen again. But it's interesting note because there's not that many storylines. Hopefully, by the time this episode drops, the series will be competitive like the NHL because at this point in time, the Cavaliers are looking to hopefully avoid being swept. So there's not really a lot of great storylines other than history, other than maybe KD and his efforts to win a title. But so far, with 2 blowouts in the first 2 games, I'm hoping that the series is a little bit more competitive.
So you're not hoping for history, and this has been a topic on radio stations widespread too throughout the nation, probably the world. Would you rather have a quick 4-game sweep and see history from the Warriors going 16-0 in the NBA postseason, or would you rather see it going long, 6 or 7 games? For me, I think it is a 6 or 7 games, and I think you're getting at that point too regarding this year's NBA Finals.
No doubt about it. I'd like to see some storyline, maybe some intrigue, but it looks like Golden State is the better team, and they're just going to destroy everybody. But yeah, if there's something going down in the locker room, it's got to be regulated. You'd have to have a lot more regulation regarding what's going on in the locker room because there's not only media there. There's kids. There's a television audience.
Yeah, so they're all sniffing it. The media's getting high. Well, look at their game stories. That'd be my excuse for my game story being lackluster. I would tell my editor at the Free Press, Kevin Bull, hey, look at my story. You know why it's not that great? I was getting high, and not even by choice. I was just taking in the fumes because it was widespread throughout the locker room from the Cavaliers players or the entourage that the Cavaliers players and just management team, the team as a whole should have told to get the hell out of the locker room if you're thinking of lighting up, right? Take it outside. But, I mean, that's a topic we could really delve into, and I don't want to too much because we discussed it pretty well here. Now, you talked about the Stanley Cup final a little bit. My only question, I'm not an NHL guy, but are you watching the final between the Predators and the Penguins? And do you think other people are? Because for me, the Nashville Preds aren't sexy. They have their niche audience in Nashville because they don't have... Do they have any other professional sports teams? No, in Nashville. So they're going to watch their Predators, and they're going to root them on. So they have a strong following there. But it's a niche fan base, and the NHL has become that in totality. It's a niche sport, kind of. Sad but true for a professional sports league that is a member of the 4 major professional sports leagues. But the NHL has become that, and I think, for me, I haven't watched the NHL Stanley Cup final, and I don't think many people are because of who's playing against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Because the Penguins with Sid the Kid, Malkin, you're watching the Penguins. There are people, and even fair weather hockey fans that will watch for the Penguins and maybe watch, especially from Detroit, to see the Penguins lose, hopefully, which I still don't think will happen. But my point is that the Predators being in the final is a reason why I think people are tuning out, and it's a problem the NHL has had for a long time, that there's a lot of teams like the Predators that really, who's watching, unless you're from Nashville, right?
No doubt about it. I'm not really invested too much. I said I'd watch Game 5 after the Predators tied the series, and that's the game I've checked into. It's good to see the Predators, a new market, kind of have some success. I'm not a fan of Pittsburgh. I'm not really a fan of hockey beyond the Red Wings. There's a lot of great storylines, but this year, kind of the Wings kind of turned me off to the sport of hockey because their play wasn't that great. They didn't make the postseason now. Their streak ended. So for me, I wasn't really invested heavily into the playoffs. I watched a little bit, but with the matchup being the Predators versus the Pittsburgh Penguins, I'm not really into it. Game 5 was cool. Nice to watch the game, sit down and enjoy it, but it's not one of those things where I'm going to be like, hey, I'm going to sit and watch the rest of the series.
So moving on from that to a more serious topic now, which we can really get into involving your MSU Spartans.
We got to get into it finally.
Gotta do it. Doc, what can you tell myself and the listeners here?
Oh, this is not good.
Well, Vito, obviously this is stemming from an incident that took place January 16th. And Michigan State, from the time that it kind of started to come out, was really embattled. They were put under the microscope because of the likes of Baylor, because of other scandals. And at first, people were looking at it like, okay, what happened? What actually happened with these football players? And then people were kind of turning their attention to, okay, who knew what, when? And so the investigations took place, and there were people that were kind of looking at it and saying, look, how did Michigan State handle it? Was it appropriate? And there was a mentality that maybe, just maybe, there was an inkling that maybe Michigan State did not do things properly. So everything was kind of kept hush-hush. And I think the secrecy that started to play out throughout the course of the last 6 months has kind of made people a little bit more anxious. But overall now, when I step back and after the news was released and the names of the athletes were released in terms of who's facing charges, I can sit back and look at it and go, okay, it was covered pretty well by the media in terms of like not pressing for the names right away, not speculating too much regarding the incident. They let the facts play out in their own timeline. You had some people that are like, hey, the media should have went and started finding out the names. Michigan State should have gave out the information. Overall, it's a delicate situation. And Michigan State, after now an external lawyer came in, investigated everything, and they found that Mark D'Antonio and his staff handled everything appropriately. Now, one staffer, Curtis Blackwell, did not do things up to par, did not really handle things according to procedure. And so it was revealed that he was the staffer and his contract was not renewed, but he's not facing legal problems. He did not do anything criminally wrong. According to what I've read, he just didn't follow the policy in terms of how to report something of this nature. So when you look at it, it's been a black cloud over Michigan State, and it should be. Because when I look at it and I think about it, sexual assault is totally abhorrent. It's less than human. It's disgusting. And I don't sit here and give excuses to young athletes. You know that you do not violate women's rights. You do not become aggressive. And I know it's football players. I know the age-old adage that, hey, these guys are aggressive. Can they turn it off? I don't care. If this is true, if what's been alleged is true, and at this point in time, there's still allegations. They've been charged, but they're going to have their day in court, these three athletes, which you'll name when you get into your side of things. But the way I look at it is overall, these are allegations, and we're now going to hear about what actually happened throughout the trial, and these guys will have their day in court. But from the evidence so far that's been released and so been talked about, it's not looking good for these athletes. And you look at it and you say, overall now, Michigan State has started to add some players that are not upstanding citizens, that are not good for the university. And I know Adam and I have talked about it with the Lions in terms of, hey, do we want thuggish type players on the Lions to help them get over the hump? And we've joked around, but we don't want criminals. When we say thuggish, we want guys that will beat up a player on the field, that will maybe play dirty on the field, that will maybe cross the line on the field. But always, and I think what Jim Caldwell has done is built a reputation and a lot of guys on his team, they've picked guys that are good in the community as well. So when I would say that, I would mean that I want thugs on the field. I don't want thugs in the community. And you don't want behavior that's illegal. You don't want to build a culture where your university is being known and being associated with this. And D'Antonio's talked about it. He said, look, I can't even talk about football. I can't even talk about the future of the program after a devastating 3-9 season. It's all stopped. And what's happened is it's become a black cloud over the entire program at Michigan State. And what needs to happen is, in the next coming months, what's going to happen is they got to do an internal sweep of, hey, who's recruiting now? What kind of athlete do we want? Are we willing to sacrifice wins to bring in guys that are upstanding citizens? State, unfortunately, has got to do that. Where do I see the football program? I see it's going to be lean. I mean, look at the names. Donnie Corley Jr.
Losing him is huge.
That's a huge loss.
A local product from King.
But
won it all with King. Great freshman, but
don't care.
Doesn't matter. No.
Immediately, Michigan State, and the question people will ask is, should they have booted these guys right away without having their day in court? You could debate that because everybody's innocent until proven guilty. but I don't think Michigan State would have taken that action so swiftly had they not known a little bit more, because you got to remember, phones were confiscated. These guys changed their stories from the first time they talked to the police up until the time where we are now. They all said, no, nothing happened. They all changed their stories according to what's been reported. So it's not a good look, and it's not something that the university can be associated with at all. So when I look at it and talk to you now, they should have been booted right away. I would have done it. I would have, if I were to make a change, I would have released the names and said, look, these guys are no longer part of the program. The police will now address this with them. Focus on that. Let's get back to where we got to get going.
But didn't they follow the legal protocol? Because of legal ramifications, their lawyers, they have lawyers now, these three players, Josh King, Donnie Corley, and Demetric Vance. By the way, Corley and Vance, two local products from the Detroit area. And it's sad that these guys' lives can be ruined so early on. But my point was, piggybacking on your point and what you were talking about regarding the investigation is that you really can't totally legally, right, kick them out without there being ramifications where, their lawyers or lawyer teams can come back at you at the university and start doing stuff, probably, throwing a lawsuit at you because there's nothing for sure set in stone that these guys were in the wrong and committed an act,
There's phrasing you could
criminal act.
There's phrasing you could use, okay? Suspended indefinitely pending investigation. I've heard that phrase.
Well, did you say kick them out though?
Suspend. Okay, I would say
suspend. Yeah, suspend's fair. Suspending them
definitely.
But weren't they kind of already suspended? They just weren't kicked out. They weren't expelled.
Right, off the team.
But obviously, after this investigation concluded, I think everybody thought, after kind of hearing the speculation, they were going to be dismissed. Mm-hmm. And these players knew it. They knew in the back of their heads. The only sad thing about these guys, because you can't defend them for what they did at all. It's abhorrent, like you said, isn't it? When somebody does something to anybody in a sexual manner where they don't consent. This woman didn't consent in an on-campus party, okay? And the only sad thing is that they're young and their lives are potentially ruined. And especially Donnie Corley, he might have had an NFL career. Think about him now, what he has to face and what can even be made of his life. Hopefully something still really good, but he's got to go through a lot trials and tribulations now legally to even get around to even having a chance of playing football. So in the grand scheme of things, these guys' football careers are more than likely all done. And Josh King, by the way, he is charged with 1 count of first-degree criminal sexual conduct and then also 1 count of third-degree criminal sexual conduct, as well as with capturing an image of an unclothed person. Now, the victim of this sexual assault.
It's unbelievable that, in this day and age, too. Did you hear the reports, Vito? These guys all went sensitivity training. They all went sexual harassment training.
Title IX, right, came in and discussed with them this, the week before or something?
Yes.
All this occurred?
In very close proximity to the event happening.
Yep.
How do you hear that, sit through a training, and then the same week or within 10 days of hearing a training, you go out and do that? Now, there probably might be alcohol, drugs. We're not speculating, but likely there may be something, involved with it where maybe something got out of hand and, one thing led to another, because I don't like to think that normal human beings with their rational brains would assault somebody, so maybe they have issues outside of it, but, and in the end, the whole story is sad. We give our support, obviously, to the victim.
Yep.
You never want this to come out. You never want this to happen to people. In terms of, especially the part that, is tough is that Mark D'Antonio's job is, as the overseer of the program, is to bring in guys that are going to be good for the community. So when you look at it, was it worth it to really bring in these guys for what's been caused now for the better part of half a year? You've lost a lot of recruits. You've had negativity upon negativity bestowed upon your program. Many people think that Mark D'Antonio should be fired for having these kind of guys, because in the end, you are responsible for the program. And I do think that, he does, really carry the weight of the program. And you could tell when he's talking to the media, you can tell when he's talking, it's taking its toll on him.
Oh, he's been bothered. And I think he's taking accountability. I think he has. As much as he can, because it's not his decision.
But the question I'm going to ask you is,
have those guys do what they did.
Should Mark D'Antonio be fired, or should he face consequences for the end result of having kind of a loss of institutional control? Because you can have that debate that right at this point in time where you have 6 to 8 players, 3 committing crimes, a couple guys using racial slurs. You have a guy that's, been kicked off the team for behavioral problems. You had Malik McDowell kind of, run amok in the locker room or become a bad teammate. Do you bestow blame? Do you say, look, hell, you're responsible for who you bring into this program. You've brought upon now really not just one. This is not a random isolated incident. It's starting to look like loss of institutional control. Should D'Antonio be blamed for it? Should he be fired?
It looks like a trend, but he shouldn't be fired because it's more of they didn't properly vet these players. And some of them, they did a vetting process, like of Donnie Corley specifically. I know of him when he was at Detroit King. He was a standout athlete, but also a young man full of class. He never had a record. There was no track record of him assaulting anybody or committing any violent acts, any criminal acts. He never had anything in his background. So this came out of nowhere, this incident with specifically Donnie Corley. Like Austin Robertson, who's been kicked off the team since for raping a woman in her apartment. Well, he had the past track record of being not the best person off the field, getting into some bad situations. So he had that record, that track record. They probably should not have allowed him to attend Michigan State. Okay? But like Donnie Corley specifically, once again, he had nothing in his background and his track record that would have told you this kid's a bad kid that will commit an act as he did, sexually assaulting a woman. So in D'Antonio's defense, remember, there is that, and these guys don't know everything. As much as they vet, okay, and have to properly vet everybody, there's sometimes where they do extensive vetting, and I really believe that D'Antonio did here with these players, and in the case of specifically, once again, Donnie Corley, he didn't find anything. So how can you figure out in your head that one day this guy who's been a great kid all his life leading up to now is going to commit a criminal act of sexually assaulting a woman? He didn't have any control over that. The only thing I would say he's in control of is bringing on some of these kids like an Austin Robertson. That's a big red flag to me, that he had a track record of being not the best kid with his head on his shoulders, and you still recruited him and allowed him to attend your university and to be on your football team. That's where I fault D'Antonio, but should he be fired or even suspended? No way, Jose, because from what we've seen now, what's been reported, he and AD Mark Hollis, they handled protocol properly in going through this ongoing investigation and getting to an end result.
Do you think the media and the way it was covered was handled with the highest journalistic integrity? Because I looked at it and I said, oh, for me, I wanted to know right then and there when the news broke in February. I'm like, who is it? Who's involved in this? What's going on? More details. But it seemed like from afar, it was handled systematically, professionally, and the level of detail was appropriate. Now, some will argue that it's, slanted negatively against Michigan State.
It is, yeah.
Where some columnists will include the entire negative history in regards to this one story. Now, that you can kind of nitpick and stuff like that, but I'm looking at in totality, not just one specific columnist or so, but in totality, I feel like the level of journalistic responsibility was there. For me, though, I would not have been surprised if the names would have been released a little bit earlier. I am actually surprised that it took this long, and I'm surprised that it was handled ethically, because you got sites like TMZ, DSP. You have other sites that maybe want to jump the gun and maybe want to kind of draw some attention to themselves and maybe release the names early. And I've asked, in the interest of full disclosure, I knew 2 of the names, okay? And the third name I was totally wrong on. I'd asked other people. I'm not going to say who I thought it was, but the information that I was privy to, I knew 2 of the names. And I never went with it. But part of me did. I'm not going to lie. Part of me did say, well, I could say I know 2 and the third is undisclosed. But I said to myself, look, is it really worth it to get that kind of attention in this kind of story? I said to myself, no. I'm just going to go along with how everyone else is handling it. Because, I'm not a journalist. I don't know any of the rules. I don't even really care about any of the rules. I said to myself, look, if others haven't jumped the gun, if they're taking this route, then it's probably in the best interest to go down that road. But I knew 2 of the names.
Well, journalists wanted the news. I think even other outlets, trust me, the Free Press and the Detroit News would have reported upon it if they found out the news as well of the 3 names of the players involved in this investigation that has led to now, once again, Josh King. Let's just specifically bring this up. If convicted, he faces up to life in prison. Now, Donnie Corley and Demetric Vance, once again of Detroit, they face up to 15 years in prison if convicted. Bad enough for these young dudes that had their lives ahead of them until now, and bright futures, especially once again. I know I keep harping upon Donnie Corley, bringing up his name, but this guy, man, he had his head on his shoulders. I saw him at last year's Sound Mind Sound Body Football Academy in Detroit, where it seemed like, man, he was quiet to himself, but full of class and a standout person too, who it looked like, Doc, honestly. This kid was so shy or introverted that he could do no wrong. And now hearing all this, it still makes me have to bring up the point, though. Even though I've said all that I did about Donnie Corley, I still have to bring up the point that they were totally, totally in the wrong, as you already said yourself. And I feel this way too, okay? Not to sound too blunt here, but a guy like Corley, who's a standout football player, he could have gotten a girl to do stuff with him.
Easily, yeah.
Much more easily. Why go to this extent where you get in trouble, you force it upon a girl to do this stuff with you? Makes no sense.
That's
and
why
it's totally wrong.
Yeah, that's why I believe alcohol or drugs or some sort of,
you think? I don't know. Once again, like Corley, and what I keep saying Corley, but I don't think, but maybe, I can't defend him there. We don't know about that. But it could have just been, hey, no drugs or alcohol too,
I think you're realizing now at your young age, I'm a little older than you, that you really don't know these guys.
No, we don't fully. And that is true.
And I don't really know you because I've seen some photos of you that make me...
I could be a total drunk. Yeah, I mean, you could be a total drunk. For all that we know, right? Seriously.
Well, I'm not drunk on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because...
At least.
The recordings are coming out. You hear my voice. I sound pretty good. So you realize that you really don't know these athletes and what they might do in the presence of a party. And that's why it's so important that drug testing take place, that the vetting takes place, and that you continue to educate these athletes about the severity of sexual assault. But then, Vito, it goes into another topic that people will talk about is the football culture, the mindset of an athlete, can you turn it off? Is the sport of football responsible for this type of behavior where we can sit here and say, yeah, turn it off, but these are the guys that are running through walls. These are the guys that are lifting, maybe taking certain supplements, maybe the mindset of, look, I got to destroy this other guy. How easy is it to turn it off when you go from the practice field to everyday life? We don't know that. We're not football players, but I'm not going to use it as an excuse. I'm going to say this. If it is difficult, if there is something to look at with football culture, they got to look at it, because if this is going to continue across college campuses, if it's going to continue at Michigan State, I wouldn't even mind if they shut down the football program, because you have to have upstanding citizens. You cannot have football players run amok and doing these type of things, but it makes you question the culture of football and the culture of athletes yet again. We've done it quite a bit of time with other athletes as well who have done abhorrent things, but it makes you think and makes you question, hey, would an athlete like Donnie Corley say, look, I was in my right mind before I got to play football. I took some hits, and now my impulse control is gone.
No.
When you use that as an excuse. How do you know, Vito?
I'm not going to use it because you know what? It paints a negative light upon other football players that are totally humane or good citizens, outstanding citizens that would never even entertain the thought of doing something like this
Vito,
to a woman.
I'm asking you to expand your mind. You're only thinking that CTE causes depression and doesn't cause rage reactions?
This is a young guy who's 19. I don't think he has CTE issues. And we can't, come on, we're going to blame these guys doing what they did on that. Come on, but think about it, there's thousands, right, hundreds of thousands of cases of sexual assault on college campuses throughout the nation that do not involve football players. Remember that, or athletes. It could have very well been a non-football player that did this too, and it'd still be a big story. Could happen to anybody. So I don't want to paint a negative portrayal of athletes, because you know what? We don't hear about this every single day, or we hear about players, but there's a lot more players on the team, is my point, right? Mm-hmm. Than just these few guys that did what they did.
What I'm saying to you is expand your mind and allow other scenarios other than they're criminals to enter your mindset into why these athletes are getting into trouble. And
I think just around the wrong people. It could be peer pressure, negative influences. It could have been one guy from this group of 3 players, Doc, that said, hey, we got a chance here to do something with this girl. And then he egged them on, and they listened to him. And they weren't mature enough, because you can be a mature football player like Corley. I mean, he was a mature football player as a freshman, but mature socially and all that, he didn't realize that this is wrong perhaps. But I'm not going to blame it on CTE or totally the football culture, because that was just in the moment perhaps where he was negatively influenced and did the act that he did because of maybe the one guy that persuaded the rest of them, right, the entire group, to do what they did with this woman.
I do think there's vast psychological reasoning for this type of stuff in regards to athletes and their egos, the football culture, maybe some brain type stuff, impulse control issues being youngsters, drugs, alcohol. I think that it's not just one thing, but a combination of everything that you and I just said is going into these athletes and what they do in their evening activities. And it's just a shame to be talking about this. It is abhorrent. It is terrible. But the one thing that you know with Michigan State, at least, is that the way that it was handled by Mark D'Antonio and his staff, by and large, was according to plan. You saw the Jones Report, I believe it's called. Within a minute of hearing the news when a player kind of revealed it to Mark D'Antonio, he was calling the proper channels, and it was documented in full. They didn't just haphazardly go through this. They investigated thoroughly. Everybody's phone was confiscated. They looked at who called who when, and it was detailed in the report. And it is, at least, to speak on something positive in a negative situation overwhelmingly. Once Mark D'Antonio found out what was going on, the institution took care of it way different than what you hear at Baylor. They handled it with the utmost sensitivity, and they did speak on, when Mark D'Antonio had the press conference, he did say, look, we stand by this victim. We are absolutely disgraced by what's happened. We're angry. We're upset. We, as a football program, support this woman, and it is not something that we want to be associated with. And Michigan State does not want to be associated with something like this any longer, and I do think it'll leave a mark on who will be coming into the program going forward. I think that you're going to see, and I do believe Mark D'Antonio is going to be a guy that's going to be afforded the opportunity to turn this around. It might be tough, in terms of the winning aspect and what you got to do to keep a program going. It's going to take a hit. Michigan State's program is going to take a hit, but I think Mark D'Antonio gained some respect in that he's not an individual that's, trying to cover up anything. He's an upstanding man and a guy that I would want, if there was going to be problems, I would want him to be the guy to help guide us through it. So I trust Mark D'Antonio. Do I think that he's going to be able to overcome this in terms of winning on the field? I think this might be it in terms of the winning at Michigan State. I don't see Michigan State competitively being around competitive football for the next 3-4 years. I think they might be hovering around 500 for the next foreseeable future.
Well, State's already lost players. Players have already decommitted, and they're going to see more and more guys decommit going forward because of all the negativity surrounding the football program right now. But if you want a guy that can potentially get you out of the dumps that MSU is in, at least perception-wise, nationwide, I think it is Mark D'Antonio, who handled this investigation in the right manner. Obviously still has a job because of it, but it will be hard to recover from last season, even, plus after everything that has occurred with these players that we have talked about, and including Robertson, including John Reschke. But remember, still, we now have a negative perception of Michigan State, but there's a good guy, an outstanding citizen leading the program in Mark D'Antonio, okay, who has never been in trouble with the law or just with really running a program, right, in the past. I mean, this guy has proven to lead a program in the right manner, to do so ethically, right? And I think, this investigation was handled ethically. It's why he still has his job, and it's why we have to remember, too, that the program as a whole is not full of thugs or convicts or people that make bad decisions. And that's where I defend the rest of the football team, too. We can bring up a few names right now, like Robertson, like Reschke, like Josh King, Donnie Corley, and Demetric Vance, that made the wrong decision in whatever circumstance it might have been. But as a whole, the football program in East Lansing is not a bad program, and is not full of bad guys who are classless individuals.
Yeah, it's tough, Vito, because you look at it like, does one bad apple spoil the entire seed? Unfortunately, when it comes to sexual assault, when it comes to, covering up, lying to authorities, when it comes to what you've done to the reputation of the program, what you've done to the program in its entirety, I think it does. And it's unfortunate that, these guys are going to be the focal point for the better part of this entire year, 2017. How does Michigan State recover from this? I think what you do is you take a step back, and what we talked about a few minutes ago, Mark D'Antonio's job is going to be to find a new recruiting coordinator and find a person that can go out there and find young athletes that he can mold to try and become upstanding citizens off the field as well as talented individuals on the field. And so the days, I think, of contending to get into the college football playoff are over. I think you can rebuild. And does Mark D'Antonio have the patience, and will he be given the opportunity to do that? I think he might, but what will happen, I think that I don't think the state football program will come back from something like this. I think this will be probably the beginning of the end for Coach D'Antonio. But in the end, though, I don't blame him. I don't look at him and view him negatively. I just say that what's happened is that, unfortunately, for whatever reason and whatever factors I hope they learn, they started selecting players that became bad citizens in the community, and it's reflected poorly on the university.
Doc, I'll just say this to finish our conversation about Michigan State and these players. It's that, okay, so you look at Michigan State's roster and what it has talent-wise. Well, Michigan State's not going to beat Ohio State more than likely, or Michigan this season, based on the talent that U of M and Ohio State possess, that Michigan State does not nearly possess enough of. So if you really take that into account, those teams are just truly better. You can't blame it upon the fact that MSU potentially will lose to both Ohio State and U of M this season. You can't say that it's, or in the future, let's say in the future, you can't say it's based on bad culture. And you can't really label MSU as having bad culture when there have been these arrests that have gained nationwide fame. But it's about more than that. It's about the rest of the team and the collective majority, right? The majority makes up what the team's all about, makes up the culture of the team. And the majority of the team still is, once again, not full of classless individuals that would commit these criminal acts. So it's unfair to the rest of the players, such as the starting quarterback, Brian Lewerke. How about him? He's a guy that we should be starting to talk about more and more, right? As we get into the nitty and gritty about what MSU will feature talent-wise on both ends of the field in 2017. Because he's a guy that has some hope, has some promise. And word came out recently that he will wear a leg brace in 2017 to protect himself after suffering, well, remember, a severe injury last season in which he hyperextended. Well, he broke his leg against Michigan, and that ended his redshirt freshman season. That was last year, and that's when it happened. That's when it happened for Lewerke. Ended his season then, but he was showing promise before all that. Even in that game, you could say, leading up to that injury against U of M. So he's a guy. My point is, let's talk about these other guys too that have some promise. Let's spotlight them because they're actually going to impact Michigan State's football team on the field in 2017. Guess what? King, Corley, and Vance, and Robertson, guys like that aren't going to impact MSU's football team and productivity and whether or not they win or lose in 2017. So it's time to start focusing on other players that actually will make the impact on the football team and on whether or not they're going to win or lose a lot or a little, right?
Well
in 2017.
Well said, Vito. I think it's one of those things that will be continued to be discussed and looked at thoroughly regarding whether it's loss of institutional control, whether it's something that Mark D'Antonio should be blamed for, and what actually happens, too. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen in court when these guys are charged and what will actually happen throughout the court case. It's just a story that's really now just beginning, and we're just now starting to talk about and explore the ramifications of something like this. And that's why I think we waited and we did the right thing in terms of talking about it like this in depthly. And it will be something that needs to be changed. Changes will come. And I do think that, you can never have enough sensitivity training so that your program does not have to go through this any longer.
Let me just ask you this really quick. Could you blame any of the woes that MSU might suffer through in 2017 on these incidents involving players that are no longer going to be a part of the program in 2017?
That's a really tough question. It's one that, probably needs to be explored further. What culpability does a university have when you have a football program and their athletes? Can the university control it? What is the role of the university? How are things done? You know what? On some level, people will say you can't control everybody. But on some level, you realize that it's your job to really take stock of these athletes and make sure that you don't have this kind of stuff happen. So what level of accountability does a university have? That's a great question. One that I think I'll think about and maybe give you an answer another time.
Because we have to kind of dive into, these teams too. The players on the field.
It's a solid question.
What are they going to do? Because MSU needs to rebound despite all this now that's happened in the offseason, leading into the season.
But Vito, you realize, I mean, I think Michigan State's done as best as it could. Sensitivity training, they had trainings, they followed the letter of the law extensively. You can't control what people do outside of the university. Unfortunately, you, as best as you can, I cannot control what you do when you leave here. I can control you the 3 hours that I see you during the week, and we have a good time. But when you leave here, you could be somebody that's not an upstanding citizen. But from the time that I know you, I feel like you're a good character and you don't make those kind of decisions, you know. But judging by your softball play, I don't know about you anymore. And the people that you do, you know, hire to cut your hair, I'm not so sure anymore about you.
Wow. Critiques aplenty. I appreciate it, Doc.
No, but we try, you know, our best. You know, we don't want to make light of a bad situation.
No.
But in essence, it's really hard to look at what Michigan State's done in light of what's been revealed and to fully blame them in terms of what has happened. They do, though, have to take some blame, and they have to make some changes to correct, because what's happened has turned out to be very negative for Michigan State and very negative for these athletes and very negative for this young lady. And we hope that everybody can be rehabilitated in the best possible way so we can get back to, hopefully in September, talking about the product on the field and how bad it's going to be.
How bad it might be. And
I think it's going to be bad.
It's probably going to be bad to start off. Well, next season, probably next season as a whole, and for a while. The thing is, I just think that you have to give D'Antonio, with his credentials now, a chance to recover the program or to rectify it and get it back moving in the right direction, as he had until it stalled completely in 2016 with the 3 wins. So that was a bad finish, but you still have to give a chance, I think, to D'Antonio to resurrect the program from where it is, which is pretty much in the dumps right now. And I think D'Antonio might be the guy who's done less or more with less. Remember that he's done more with less. And really the motto has been at Michigan State in recent memory, less is more, right? They haven't always landed the 5-star recruits, and they're not going to anyways, despite all this stuff, off the field stuff that doesn't help out their recruiting front and their reputation with recruits they're trying to land in East Lansing. Still, it comes down to you're not going to out-recruit Jim Harbaugh at U of M or Urban Meyer at Ohio State. But hasn't it been the case anyways in the past? Since Harbaugh's been at U of M and since Urban Meyer's been at Ohio State? So my point is, even though maybe some looming 4- and 5-star athletes aren't going to look as strongly at MSU anymore as a possible landing place, a destination for them to pursue a collegiate football career, you know what? It's still about the fact that there's a talent gap and a perception gap between the Ohio States and Michigans of the world and then Michigan State. So for me, the struggles of this upcoming season, you can't blame bad culture on it. And I wouldn't label MSU's football program as a whole as having bad culture intact, even though we have these incidents that we just talked about in depth as we end this week's edition of Two Bad Hombres with that, Doc.
Episode 23, now in the books. I enjoyed it. It's nice to have frank conversations with you, Vito. You have the utmost integrity, I do honestly believe, and I enjoy every conversation that we have. I'm even so comfortable that I found myself eating during the podcast. How fun is that?
Look at that. I don't think you ever have with me.
Yeah, enjoy myself. I'm relaxed. We can have these honest conversations, and people are receiving it nicely. You're getting some nice reviews. The videos are always of the highest quality, and your podcasts are really, really good. And we're happy to have you part of the network, man. It's good stuff.
Well, let's have some more relaxed and frank conversations next week on episode number 24 of the podcast.
Download all of Vito's podcast, DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
See you guys.
I was trying to get it out here. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up. Head spin, get it fly. I got 6 jobs.